Hi everyone. Welcome. Thank you for attending our talk. We're here to tell you about T-env, the Lemonade development environment, how it worked for us, the great productivity and satisfaction gains we got out of it, some of the mistakes we had and how we coped with them, and we'll end with a glance at the future. I'm super happy to be here. It's my first KubeCon, and I'm happy to be here with my good friend Ramiro.
Hey everybody, nice seeing you. Ramiro, founder of Okteto, and please give an applause for Nir, first KubeCon appearance.
Thank you. So we have a very full 25 minutes, so I'll just skip the intros and get right into it. Before we start, I just want to say a few words about Lemonade. Lemonade is an innovative insurance company, and the words innovation and insurance don't often go together. So here's 30 seconds that I hope will convince you otherwise.
Yo, is today the day? You want to get a workout in?
Oh man, I totally would, but I'm in the middle of filing this insurance claim right now, or else I would definitely go.
Lemonade Renters Insurance pays claims fast. Whether you like it or not.
Try this one.
I've seen that video 10 times already and I laugh every time, I'm sorry. And we don't have a nice video, but we do have an open source project. Okteto is a platform that enables everybody in your organization to work with remote ephemeral environments that look like production and run on Kubernetes. So if you like what you see, check out our project on GitHub. We also have a commercial product for large organizations.
So at Lemonade, we started, like many of you, I imagine, we have a service-oriented architecture, and we started with local development. And I think the issues with this kind of architecture and local development are well understood, so I'll just speed by them. I think one of the main things we lost is, okay, we couldn't run everything on our laptops anymore. The number of services and backing services got to be large, and one of the things I like about working at a consumer-facing company such as Lemonade is I can see the impact of my work very, very quickly. And we kind of lost that experience, especially for new developers joining the team. It took several days to get started.
And this is something that it happens across the industry, where like developers are spending a lot of time on local dev, dealing with CI-only issues, configuration drift. It's a big problem, something that all of us who work on platforms are very aware of and are trying to solve, because it just drains productivity, drains excitement, and it's not what developers really sign up to do when they join a company.
So the next iteration for us was, let's move to the cloud. We went for EC2 instances. We built this supercharged Docker Compose setup, built with a bunch of shell scripts and packaged together. We would SSH into these remote machines and code remotely. And okay, so we got the win of not having to run everything on our laptops. And also we got a smaller win. We learned to delegate ownership of services to teams, and they had to make sure everything was working properly on development. But we had bigger problems. So firstly, we kept this complex setup, except it's in the cloud. Actually, it got a little bit worse because we had this specialized IDE configuration in order to code remotely. And secondly, this required a lot of manual effort to update your development environment. So pull latest changes and run whatever manual operations were needed to keep it up to date, like schema migrations, data migrations, and so on. So we were solving problems that are unique to development, and that's frustrating and, not to mention, a waste of time. And for me personally, a smaller problem for me, it was kind of big, but networking became an issue. So I take the train to work, and I couldn't work on my commute anymore. I would see this pop up, and I knew I had to reload everything, and guess what? I stopped working on the train.
And this is where, this is very famous talk by Dave McKinsey on choosing more in technology, where he talks about innovation tokens. In his talk, and please check it out, it's on YouTube, he talks a lot about how teams can only innovate in a certain number of things. And I think something that we have to consider, especially as platform builders, is that this also includes internal tools. Your developers have a limited number of innovation tokens per day, per week, per sprint, per whatever unit of measure you use. And they're going to use it either on trying to figure out a local dev experience, something that fixing the friction, or they're going to use it on building great things. So it is a choice we have of, do you want to empower the developers to be free of like the constraints and innovate, or keep building local things? And that's what like Nir's team faced when they started to decide to build the next level of this platform.
Just connecting to that, for me, this was very real. At the time, I was a team lead working on pet insurance, and I could see this firsthand on my team. The developers on my team just found creative ways to continue shipping software. So some of them went back to working locally, and they didn't have support for that, so they had to solve problems on their own. Some of them worked on staging environments, and then they had this long feedback cycle to get their code updated. So the biggest takeaway for me was that developers will just find ways around and find ways to ship their code, and they'll silently stop using whatever you're providing. They'll go rogue.
Let's keep going. I think we're running out of...
So what happened at Lemonade is that a bunch of volunteers from around the company decided to build something new. We were very frustrated with what we had, so we decided to build something, and this was really a bottom-up kind of effort. What you can see here in this picture is a workshop we held for service owners, adding support for T-env to their services. And I don't often take pictures of my meetings, so I think that tells you a little bit about the energy and vibe here. We knew we were building something good and important for the organization. Before I go into the details, here's something to illustrate the impact. So that's a graph of PRs merged per week. I know it's not a DORA metric, it's not a sophisticated one, but you can tell, we could tell, and this I think illustrates the point. From when T-env was launched, we saw this dramatic increase of productivity and satisfaction for developers.
And one thing here, just for a second, that the first time I saw this chart really spoke to me is how you can see that very clear inflection point when T-env was launched. And what's cool about this is that this was not because of a new code base, a big effort of hiring new people, change of priorities. It was because the team got together, built this platform, solved a very important problem that they had internally among friction and productivity, and then just very, very quickly, you can see it was almost like in a few days, productivity just spiked. And then it has kind of remained, you can see how it's sustained over time. So I think this is a very important testament of how building platforms, especially when you do it bottoms up, by having the input of many different teams, really make a huge difference for organizations.
So let's get into the internals a little bit. This is what it looks like for a developer setting up a new environment. They use the same deployment pipeline that we use for staging or production, which deploys AWS cloud resources, and as a second step deploys Kubernetes resources in our development cluster. At Lemonade, each developer has one or multiple copies of the Lemonade system running for them.
And once they solved the deployment aspect of this, came the second challenge, which was dev experience. How do we give developers a fast inner loop? And that's where Nir kind of reached out to us, and through the magic of the internet, they had this problem, they found our open source project, reached out to us, and we were able to collaborate on this. And the idea with this is they're using our open source project, Okteto CLI, to give developers the ability to target microservices on this environment on Kubernetes, and then they're able to run one command, Okteto up, and then replace one of the running containers for the dev version of the pod, where they can do things like file synchronization, remote debugging, hot reloading. The idea with Okteto and what Lemonade wanted to accomplish is to give developers access to an environment that looks like production, so their testing is realistic, the impact of their changes can be validated. However, without losing the fast feedback loop that all of us developers are used to. No? We want to write code and see the results of that code fast. So they were able to do this by kind of joining the work they did at the platform level with what we offer in our open source CLI.
So yes, as Ramiro said, exactly. We took the Okteto CLI and manifest, and we wrapped it with a CLI we built at Lemonade, and we encoded it with our specific Lemonade logic and abstractions. and we gave developers the ability to enter and exit dev mode, this Okteto up, and also this grew over time to do much more, to allow deployments, to allow access to your development database, you name it. It's our single developer tool. Additionally, we built a VS Code extension. Actually, this was a contribution by developers at the company, so it showed me that we were doing something good if they chose to extend it. So it brings T-env a little bit closer into your IDE. Another thing that we built is observability for looking at your environment as a whole if you're debugging issues with your code and or with your environment. So this allows a little bit high-level view of your environment at aggregate.
And something really cool to note here, like these 3 slides, when we were going through the talk, I kind of fought to keep them in. Because to me, one of the most outstanding things that they did is they went beyond the, most of us, when we think of platforms, we think of like infrastructure, self-service, governance. But what I like about Lemonade, and it's very aligned to how we at Okteto see platforms, is they saw this as this multi-dimensional entity where you have infrastructure, but you also have dev experience, fast feedback loops, observability, documentation, internal support. They went above and beyond. I think this is one of the main reasons why they've seen this big success, not only with productivity, but also with very fast adoption. And, it's all built on top of open source, which, makes me very, very happy. I've been contributing to open source for my entire career. I owe most of my work to open source, Kubernetes, and they leverage Kubernetes, Okteto, Pulumi, Hotel, Grafana. You can see a lot of this. And to me, this is why it's so important to continue to foster this open source ecosystem. Because this allows enterprises like Lemonade to leverage the common use cases we all have that we can all build together and then use them to help their internal goals to hit them faster, easier. They have a very smallish team. They don't need 1,000 people to build a platform because they can leverage the work that all of us in these rooms have done and given to the community.
So now that we've covered a little bit the details, I'd like to look at what worked well for us and summarize it and talk about it a little bit. The first thing is, we mentioned this already, but looking at it from the developer perspective, the frustration and the pain of setting up your environment is gone. So we can set up a new environment in a matter of minutes, literally the time it takes to deploy a service. So this onboarding new developers at the company can start and contribute very fast. I can run my unit test. I can deploy to my environment in a way that's identical to staging and production. So all of those things are much smoother and faster. The second thing we did well looking back is adoption. We understood that T-env had to work well for a majority of developers out of the box. So we had this volunteers join and add from each company, from each team, join and add support for T-env to their services. Yeah, and just this picture again, I think this tells you the story of what happened. I think that the frustration of the previous solutions really is one of the things that pushed us to do this well. We also invested heavily in documentation, and the point was we want developers to self-service. So we want them to have everything they need, so they don't need us. They can just solve their problems on their own.
And this is something that I want to really stress, because in my experience, most companies can skip this part. You have to build something that works. You have to solve a pain point that is real in your organization, but that's not enough. You have to invest on documentation, on internal trainings, on internal marketing. We all talk about building platforms as products, and this is a very important part of it that I was really surprised, in a good way, really impressed to see that the team at Lemonade kind of did it. And for them, as a product-led company, and maybe it's obvious, but for a lot of us, this is something very important to keep in mind.
The third thing, or the last thing in the positive section, is we standardized. We had this main way of doing things. It's not that we were so smart, is we had limited resources and we needed to tell developers, this is the way, right? You can, obviously there's people who are going to want to work differently, developers who are going to want to have their own system, but we have one main way of doing things, one golden path if you want, and this is what we support. But as I said, not everything was great, and here's some of the challenges and how we cope with them. The first one is we talk about these ephemeral environments. Ramiro talks about them a lot. So we have this one time, run them, then throw them away, and this is the ideal, right? In practice, what we found is developers don't necessarily want to do this. They want to keep their environments for longer periods of time. And the reason why is they reach a certain state. They want to work on a specific feature. They have a certain state that they have in their environment. They want to keep it. It's not necessarily mandated, but we decided we're going to meet them where we are, and we made a trade-off here of letting them run their environments for longer periods of time. And this had engineering repercussions. It meant we needed to do changes in order to support this. And the second thing is, okay, we have these long-running environments, and they start to cost a lot in terms of cloud cost. So we iterated, we're looking for solutions. What we landed on is an environment lifecycle that scales down, puts the environments to sleep according to the developer time zone. And then in the morning or whenever the developer wants to work, then they can run a command and wake up their environment, and through the magic of Kubernetes, then it scales up, and then they can enter dev mode or deploy or whatever they want to do. And at any time, they can always kill their environment and create a new one if they choose to do so. Lastly, so based on these 2 points, the realization is for me that this kind of platform requires a long-term commitment. So we had this volunteer task force kind of way of working, and it worked really well for us in terms of adoption. But after this period where we had this solution, we kind of invested less in our solution. And looking back, I would have done this differently. Form a small team and continue to invest. Okay, a few words about the future. Lemonade is continuing to grow, continuing to evolve. We see that we're entering a new phase. We need to grow even faster. We need to scale even faster. We have more developers. We have more services. And there is another big, significant change. And I'll let Ramiro talk about this.
Yeah, so as we know, and I live in San Francisco, so I am forced to say AI, or I cannot go back home. But AI is changing the way we build software. And one of the things that we both agree on was that we are moving from a world where developers are writing code to a world where developers are going to be managing agents that write code. And one of the first things that we believe you're going to need to change is how we treat dev infrastructure. Because in this world that Nir and his team built, you have a certain number of developers, which means you have a certain number of dev environments, no? 1-to-1, maybe 2-to-1. If you think of a world where you have one developer handling 10 agents, and each agent handling its own environment, infrastructure cannot grow linearly, or the cost will just kind of eat you on top of everything else. So our vision for this is that the next generation of dev environments need to be light, quick, and cheap, where every environment only needs to have the services you're working on, while there are larger shared environments where you can fall back for the rest of the services of your solution. And this is something that we at Okteto are actively developing, that I know that Nir and his team are thinking about it as well.
Exactly. We're looking at this. This is a complex problem, right? It requires isolation at the network level, data isolation, and we're looking for ways to solve this in a relatively simple way. And I'll be glad to tell you, it's still a work in progress. Hopefully next year we'll be here to talk about it. If you're interested, we'd love to talk about it and hear your thoughts and chat more at the conference. That's it for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Do we have time? Thank you.
We might have time too.
Do we have time for questions?
We have a couple of minutes for questions. And if not, we're going to be around the conference if you want to talk platform, dev experience, feedback loops, agents, and all those wonderful things.
We've got about 5 minutes, so if there are questions, then if people want to use the mic. Any questions? No? Well, they're going to be around, so come and find them if you think of something later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.